not starting yet. I just wanted to give a warning. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. We can see there's still some people coming in from their cars, but if you want to find your seats, and also to let you know that there's additional seating up in the balcony, so if you're feeling a little too tight down here, you're welcome to find a seat up above as well. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of all of my colleagues here at Cabrini University, I would like to welcome everyone to the Jolyon Pitt Girard Distinguished Scholar in Residence event. We are so glad that you are here with us. Before I introduce our student, Emma Law, to come up and provide a reflection, I want to take a moment to pause and just recognize my colleagues, my staff, who have helped to make this event possible. As you might imagine, in our final months here as a university, we are really coming together as a Cabrinian family to make special events happen for our students. And so I especially want to thank our conference and event staff, especially Felix and Alexis, who set up these beautiful events. I want to thank John Doyle and his students who are making the live stream possible for today. So really grateful for them so that people can be joining us literally from all around the country right now. And want to thank our academic affairs staff and certainly Jim Hedke for helping to plan and coordinate this event. So thank you to all of my colleagues for helping to plan this event in our final months as a university. And now I'd like to invite one of our dear students, Emma Law, to provide the reflection.
Good afternoon. While I have never had the honor of having Dr. Jolyon Girard as a professor, I have felt his influence throughout this university in the 3 short years I've been a student here. Since his time arriving at Cabrini in 1973, Dr. Girard is most well known for his impact on the men's basketball team and the history and political science department. He founded the men's athletic program, which has given many young men who have come through this university the chance to play a sport they love. Dr. Girard taught history and political science here at Cabrini for 4 decades. In this time, he taught students on diplomatic, military, and Latin American history. He has inspired his students to remain open-minded and to continue their pursuit of knowledge. In 2008, following his retirement, Dr. Girard established the Jolyon Pitt Girard Distinguished Scholar in Residence to bring historians to Cabrini so they could share their knowledge about a subject in which they were passionate about. In speaking with colleagues and students about Dr. Girard, one thing became certain. Dr. Girard has had a full life, a life full of love, loss, successes, and failures, which have all culminated to make him the person he is today. His ability to continue to cherish his university that he spent so long at is something I'll admire for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. What a great job, as we could already hear from the cheap seats over here, some chatter from someone who I know we're going to hear a lot from. I know. So when I came to Cabrini many years ago, I realized very quickly that there were faculty members here who were just iconic. They all went by one name, kind of like Madonna or Prince, right? So it's like Joe and Sharon. And when you say these names, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And it extended into the coaching world, right? Zeke, we all know these single names, and you know exactly who it is and the legacy that these people carry on. And so, of course, the History and Political Science Department, a department near and dear to my heart as someone in the humanities. I was in the English department, and so being in Grace Hall, some of these icons would have to walk back past my door to get to their offices. And so there were some of these legendary folks in the History and Political Science Department, and one of those names, of course, is Joly. And if I were to think about like what would be the legacy of if we were putting it in a museum on a wall of Joly, I would picture a sort of pastoral impressionist painting of the peace pole with a man smoking a cigar, and in my mind there's children at his feet like learning like this. In reality, we know they're actually college students sitting on the benches, but in my mind they're like at his feet, just like, tell me more, Joly, right? And listening to his stories. And so in my mind, that's the legacy of Joly. But of course, Joly can't be captured in a painting because he's so animated, as we're going to experience this evening as a Cabrini family. And then, of course, the other giant in the History Political Science Department is Jim. And Jim walked past my office many, many times, walking by what my office, which used to be the faculty mailroom. So a lot of faculty would walk in out of habit to get their mail and then be startled because I was sitting there, not the mailroom anymore. So I got to meet Jim early on, and many times Jim would stop by also when I was sitting in my department chair's office. And Jim always gave such sage advice and just always was so calm in his presence and reassuring and encouraging to me as a rising faculty member. And so before I introduce Jim to introduce Joly, we have a little bit of a surprise, and I'm going to call Jamie up to the stage, and we're going to have a little presentation to honor our dear Jim Hedke.
Thank you. Doc, thank you so much for letting us impose on your day and your spotlight. So we can take a few moments to give some very much overdue thanks and credit to Dr. Hedke. As a professor and chair of history and political science, he has served the Cabrini community for 50 years. Think about that for a moment. Not too many people stay in their job for 50 years. He's the author of 3 books. He's an expert on the American presidency, the Civil War, and World War II. He was coach for the women's softball team, and he was inducted into the Cabrini Hall of Fame in 2018. You can read his full biography on the Cabrini website if you'd like, but I'd like to talk a little bit about what he means to the alumni, especially. And to do that, I reached out to the alumni body through Facebook, and yes, I also went on to rate my professor and asked people to comment. Jim was once known as a hot tamale, by the way. But I quote, he clearly loves teaching and respects his students. Every lecture is entertaining, and he is enthusiastic about his subject. Students have compared his lectures to attending a Broadway show. Maybe Pygmalion. He wants his students to succeed and is a great and understanding guy. Amazing teacher, is loud and curses. He acts out historical scenes. He's extremely friendly, and he throws around Villanova jokes all the time. Maybe not so smart. I was surprised no one mentioned his puns. When I was in classes with him, that was my strongest memory, that he used to pun all the time. Maybe you grew out of that, I don't know. I missed that this morning. I sat in Jim's classes this morning to get some primary source material. He still tells wonderful stories, wonderful jokes. He's still entertaining, dynamic, and energetic. And in addition, when I think of Jim Hedke, I think of a man of dignity, humility, intellect, and humor, with a true love for his fellow man. Jim, you were always a role model for me, and I want to thank you for everything you did for me as a student. I want to thank you on behalf of all of the alumni and the college community. And we have a small plaque here for you, if you'd like to come up, and I'll give this to you. Yep. It's enjoy it. Thank you. Let me just read the plaque. It says, to James Hedke, celebrating 50 years of service, thank you for your unwavering dedication, excellent scholarship, exemplary instruction, and overall tireless contribution to Cabrini alumni and students.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're very welcome. And we also have a gift from the alumni, because so many of them were willing to contribute. We were able to put together a scrapbook for Dr. Hedke. So this is for you.
Thank you again.
You're very welcome. And I just want to say one last thank you to Holly Havens, our alumni chair, who could not be here today, but this wouldn't have been possible without her. She made this happen. So thank you.
Well, thank you once again, Jamie. If my parents were alive, my mother would have said, "That's my boy." My father would have said, "Who the hell is that you're talking about?" So thank you very much. But it is really my honor and pleasure to introduce the next person. So first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Jolyon Pitt Girard Scholar in Residence Lecture. It's great to see so many familiar faces out here. It's good to see people hanging from the balcony as well. The Pascarella's up there, so good to see you. And it's really my great pleasure to introduce this year's Girard Scholar, Jolyon Pitt Girard himself in the flesh. Joly is a legend at Cabrini, and he belongs on the institution's Mount Rushmore. He arrived at Cabrini in 1973, and over 4 decades taught thousands and thousands of students, providing them not only with an education of the mind, but in the Cabrini tradition, an education of the heart. Joly just wasn't a teacher. He was a role model. He was a coach. He was a mentor. And I'm looking out there, to some of you, a surrogate parent. He is, without a doubt, one of the finest teachers this institution has ever had. And Joly's legacy is his students. His students have gone on to do extraordinary things. You can ask them in the room. I've talked to them. So many have done such great things in their life. And he continues to touch and shape the future through his students. Joly helped shape Cabrini. You did. Yeah. You brought about the first men's basketball team here. You were their coach. You started the History Political Science Department, helped develop the Political Science major and the American Studies major. You shepherded countless young faculty members through the promotion and tenure process. And as we know, you were an instrumental part in the institution's accreditation teams for middle states. You are, without a doubt, on our Mount Rushmore. But I can say you're a Triple Crown winner, too. He's won the Cabrini Triple Crown. Okay? He won the Lindback Award for teaching excellence. He's an honorary alum, and he was an inaugural member of the Cabrini University Sports Hall of Fame. He's the first one to do that. But you're the first. It's no good being second. Okay. How old am I? You're older, okay. On a personal note, Joly has been my friend. He's been my colleague. He's been my mentor. He's been my co-conspirator. And, well, I won't tell where the bodies are hidden, but thank you for helping me move them. Exactly. And so he's been that as well as a steadfast, caring, loyal person, a person who I'm greatly indebted to. So I want to say here and now, thank you, Joly, for all you've done for me. Okay. In many ways, he's the brother that I never had. Yeah. So I'll help you, brother. So today, Joly will speak on the threat to democracy. Please help me give a warm, loud welcome to Dr. Jolyon Pitt Girard.
Let him come down first. We're not going to hug him. There we go. Let's give you a hug. I should tell you that Jim and I created a special secret society. He and I were the only ones in it. And we invented a student and got her through to her junior year. How we conned the registrar and other faculty members who should have been teaching her in the courses we said she was, I don't know, but Jim and I got away with it. So there are other things we could tell you, but you'd have to pay a larger honorarium than I did. I'm very pleased that everybody came. When Jim and I talked about this, first of all, I didn't create the Girard Scholar. Johnny Guerra and the president for whom she worked created that, and it's the alum who contributed the money to fund this. So it's the alum that should be happy to have done that, or sad, one way or the other, since I'm the last one to do it. But the other ones before us were pretty good. So thank you. I agreed to do it because nobody was out searching anybody, and I called Jim. I said it might be appropriate maybe if I do the last one here. But then I learned, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that Villanova is going to keep the Girard Scholar program. Well, they're thinking the name, the name instead of a basketball player, or? Okay, and they'll get good people after this one? No. I plan to be here. I cashed the check already. So there's nothing you can do. So, I mean, right now I could fall down here on the stadium, and you still have to cash the check. It's been done. I've spent it. Good cigars. Okay. All right. Can you hear me if I talk about? Oh, for God's sake. I expected 10 students who didn't know who I was to be here. I mean, this is more exciting. Is it, gang? All right. I don't want anybody else in the audience to answer this to start this. I voted in the past 2 presidential elections. If any of the students here can tell me for whom I voted, I will give you $100. Hat man. Wrong. There's only one other person running. Wrong. Yeah, anybody. $100, guys. There are only 2 people running. You said Biden, I said wrong. No. You know you can write in ballots? Now I'll give you $100 if you can tell me who I wrote in. Say again? Are you nuts? What year are you, young lady? Say again? Hedke's too smart to take the job. Anybody? Say? Well, you are. I'm older than Biden, which is why I'm going to read some of this. I voted for Condoleezza Rice. It was only 1 vote. How many of you young people, who doesn't know who Condoleezza Rice is? Anybody? She was a Bush Secretary of State. She's a Russian expert who runs a think tank at Stanford. More importantly to me, and today, Thursday, the Masters began, she's the first woman member of Masters Golf Course in Georgia. And she's a part owner of the Denver Broncos. Now, anybody with that background should be the President of the United States. But as I said, she's too smart to want the job. So I'm voting for her again if I'm still alive. And I'm wondering how many of you, given the option, would do that. I could start a movement, but I wouldn't get her on board. Well, with that in mind, a little background to set this up. Since I've retired every morning, 6:30, I show up at a little delicatessen in Cherry Hill. We have a cup of coffee with a bunch of people, and we try to solve the world's problems, and we fail miserably. But we have fun. And there are all kinds of different ones. There are Trump people, there are Biden people, there are people who don't even know who those 2 people are. But they still show up. And when I'm finished down there around 7:30, because about an hour is all we can take, I go back to a study I have with a fan in it that blows cigar smoke out of the house. My wife made one condition. I could have my study and I could smoke, but I had to have a fan down there that could fly an airplane. You could get the stuff out. And I do. I smoke 1 cigar a day, and I smoke in the study, and I turn on the television set, and I watch the morning news. I watch 20 minutes of MSNBC, and I switch to Fox, and I watch 20 minutes of Fox, and then I switch to CNN, and then I say, oh, God, and then I go get a book, and I start to read. And I'm reading, what the hell am I reading now? I forget. A study of Russian history at the time of the revolution. But here's what I've discovered. On Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough, who's the lead pundit, talks about a threat to democracy. And he calls it Madisonian democracy. All the time he mentions Madison, and Madisonian democracy is under threat. But he never explains what Madisonian democracy is. I know who Madison is. He's a former president. And I know that he had a major role in constructing the Constitution of the United States. But I never see him or anybody else for that matter, if I turn to Fox or CNN or I read the New York Times or the New York Post, which is the Fox version of the New York Times, they never tell me exactly what Madison meant when he talked about his construction of democracy, which goes back to 400 years before the birth of Christ in Periclean Athens. So I thought, I'd sort of look at this for a little bit. Aiden, where are you? If you really want to know about Madison's point of view about democracy, what part of the Federalist Papers would you read? 47. Wow, look at you. Look at you. 47. How many of you have read the Federalist Papers? Yeah. I wonder whether Joe Scarborough has. Because if you read the Federalist Papers, the country that he wants is certainly not Madison's. Maybe Alexander Hamilton's, but not his. So let me go on from here. But for that, I have to prove that I'm 82 years old and get out glasses. I can drive a car in the dark, but I can't read. Democracy, demokratia. Greek, loosely, people power. Okay, that's a wide open issue. What does it mean? Liberty. What does that mean? We have liberty. In Periclean Greece, the right to think, the right to speak, and the right to own were the three principles of Athenian democracy thousands of years ago. Are they still? We say they are, and they may well be. However, they also recognized that there was a social contract as well. That individual liberty was one thing, but what about a community of people? Were there some ways that compromise had to be derived, created? There's some way that we could all get together and yet still preserve our own individual freedom, limited to be sure, but we can't just be savage individuals. And so what begins to emerge in this democracy as it goes from 400 years before Christ to today is how do I preserve the liberty of an individual to think, to speak, and to own, and at the same time come up with a social contract that binds us all together. The people who met at Philadelphia to resolve that Constitution had that in mind as they began to develop it. And what is it that our government and Congress does? So I have it in 1787 and 88. Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay wrote 85 essays, the Federalist Papers, published in New York newspapers in an attempt to convince the New York Assembly to approve the new Constitution and do away with the old one. The former articles had placed political power in each of the 13 states, not in the central government. It created limited authority there, similar, Jim, and you may know this better than I, to the current Swiss Republic. They don't have an executive branch, do they, in those cantons? Do you know? I think, well, no, I know. Jim is supposed to be my political science teacher. But, yeah, no. Well, you weren't on the computer yesterday. There are 26 cantons, states in Switzerland. They don't have an executive branch. So think of federalism in this country with no president. And yet they get along fine. I looked up some research before I go on. There are 195 sovereign states, nations in the world. They divide them up. They're good democracies. They're flawed democracies. They're democracies that lie. You know, Putin just won re-election, gang. He's been in power a while. They voted for him. That's democracy. Or is it? I don't know. I don't know their constitution. I don't think anybody ran against it. But maybe that's what President Biden's trying to do, or what Donald Trump's trying to do. Since I have to tell you, I'm a... Say again? Yeah, well, that's sometimes the way you do away with opponents. So, but it's still people voted. I don't think any of us would consider. China's a democracy. They vote. They vote. At least that's what this company says. So I give that to you. So when we talk about democracy and we talk about governments that operate in a democracy, they can be completely different. We have a special one. So here's what what Madison says. And he's taking this, and I have to give you some stuff to make it look like I look stuff up. John Locke, the British philosopher, wrote 2 treatises of government in 1690. And Montesquieu, the French enlightened writer, wrote The Spirit of Law in 1748. If you don't think Madison and Jefferson and Hamilton read those guys, you're kidding yourselves. I'm wondering whether Donald Trump or George Biden even know who they are. But every one of the people that was at the Constitutional Convention, now I understand they were all born at the same time, and they all lived together, and they shared the same ideas. But I'll tell you, there's some stuff in it. And then Rousseau writes on the social contract in 1762. This is, again, 30 years before the Constitution. And he's saying to not only Europe, but to this fledgling America, the right to think, the right to speak, the right to own. However, you are restricted by your relationship with your fellows. And I would not say ladies, because I don't think either Rousseau, Jefferson, or Madison considered you. Unfortunately, maybe he should have. John Adams' wife tried to remind them that women were not only as smart as men, but in many cases smarter. But they weren't paying attention. So how does it work? And what's the point of what we have as the Constitution that was approved? Did you finish what was in 47, Aiden? What he said? So I don't have to repeat it? No, that's all right. You're one of the smartest people that I've talked to in months, so I won't get involved with you anymore. Key sentence in Article 47. Concentration of power is tyranny. And he said any concentration of the wealthy, concentration of a single individual, concentration of a political faction when there are more than one, and there usually are. Anybody who controls a government, Putin, creates tyranny, whether they say they're a democracy or not. So what I've got to do, and what Hamilton has to do, and what Jay has to do, what we all have to do is create a legal system that will guarantee that none of them will ever control the government. This is an irony. I want a government that's all screwed up. And I said to my students, and I don't even know if some of you remember or not, I used to say, I'll give you an A in this class, you may never come again, if you can tell me where the ultimate power is in the U.S. Constitution. Who says the people? That's what it says. Yeah. To be administered, however, not by themselves. In Athens, the citizens, of course there were only about 600 of them kind of thing, put rocks to vote aye or nay. They had 4 million. What's our population? And which citizens? Utah, total combination, I mean, they really played with this. You would agree, James, that these guys are smart guys. I know they're dead white men. I apologize. They're not fashionable anymore, but they were, and they read stuff. So how do we do that? How do we get the day's work done? There are rebellions in Massachusetts. We can't get a contract with a European country. I'm talking about then, not now. Well, not now either. Whatever. A court is different here. You can go to one court in Alabama. Well, maybe I ought to say, you can go to one court in Arizona and get a completely different position on if you're in a court in Massachusetts. But it doesn't matter what they think, it matters who you are. If you're from Massachusetts and Arizona, you're going to get screwed. And if you're from, well, there wasn't in Arizona. If you're from Virginia and Massachusetts, the Massachusetts people are going to look the other way. What are we going to do about that? So how do they set it up? Where is the power? Executive branch. How much power did they have when it first started? Legislative branch, bicameral. Congress serves for 2 years. Why? The Senate serves for 6. Why? Why? What did they have intended in that? Why should a Senate with 26 senators serve for 6 years when the congressmen, I apologize, ladies, are based on population? He knows. Some of you know. That was remarkable thinking. And why should the judiciary be independent? Wow. Where have we been the last 4 or 5 years, folks? Where have you been? Anytime we don't like it, let's change the number. Or castigate them from the media until they all say, oh my God, who wants this job? Sort of like Condoleezza Rice. And look what they came up with. Show me where the power is, and I'll show you tyranny. Where is it? And is it different today than it was in the 1780s and 90s? Is a population of 4 million obviously different than a population of 350 million? 12 states, 50 states and subsidiary possessions. Do we do what the Constitution says? I think we do, actually. You know, if Arizona wants to pass some 1860s law, you can shake your head all you want, but welcome to democracy. I think they're stupid. But nobody asked me. You have to sit here and listen to it, but nobody asked me. But what is democracy about? So the Virginia state says that's what they're going to do. And I say, is there another body that has the right to do it? Well, Dobbs did that. Dobbs screwed that up. Supreme Court's been there since the beginning. And it's changed. And it can be changed again. Or, like-minded people, perhaps like you and I, Johnny, although I don't know, might ask for a Congress and the Senate to pass a law that makes it federal. Why don't they? Because they have representatives there who are listening to their Democratic voters. Yeah? Now, they could be dumb as a rock, or they can be so smart they think they know everything. It seems to run both ways. But isn't that what a democracy is? We decide who can vote. Women and African Americans caught up late, but they caught up. Too little, too late, perhaps, but they caught up. Are we getting a democratic view of, you know, when somebody in Utah decides if I want to carry a machine gun and blow up all the bison on the plains, and the state agrees to it and says, go ahead, shoot them. Isn't that what a federal republic has the right to do? There's nothing in the constitutional system that prevents any state from doing that, right? I always pick on Johnny because she was my boss. And there's nothing she can do now. Nobody can fire me. I have all the money I need. I'm married well. And frankly, I care what your opinions are about everything, but I'm not always guided by them. The right to think, the right to speak, and the right to own. Yeah? Did they accomplish it? Then, Alexis de Tocqueville arrives, French aristocrat, wants to study America. It's been a democracy for a while. And he stays here, and he came originally, he said, to study the prison system. Why, I don't know, but then he went back to France and he wrote Democracy in America, English title. And he was impressed. This little pipsqueak country on the edge of the Atlantic. And then he posed this question. In a democratic society, where voters now don't have to own property to vote, the only change that was made at that point was white property holders could carry the vote. And states were allowed to make that decision. It's not in the Constitution, other than states could decide who could vote. You had to be white, you had to be a property holder, you had to be a male. States began to change that and allow white men to vote who did not own property. As most of you should know, women were not permitted to vote in national elections until the 20th century. And African Americans were only awarded the vote after the American Civil War and the 14th and 15th Amendments. And then southern states found ways to jury-rig systems so they could not vote at all. But eventually, I don't think anybody's being even gerrymandered out of that. But what happens if the majority of people get control of this system? Can they create a tyranny? The tyranny of the majority. I've looked at the French Revolution. The people had a wonderful way to take care of that system when it started, and it took an emperor to end it. Well, maybe that's not such a good idea. So he starts to then make the sense of the argument. What can I do? I can't have a tyrant. I can't have a single class of people running the society, or race, or gender. Well, he didn't say that. But then who do I give it to? Can I funnel a broad egalitarian voting public to send the right people to the federal system? You guys can vote in school board meetings, although you're screwing that all hello. But you can only vote for people who will represent you in Congress or the presidency. Does that stem the tyranny of the majority? Or, what the hell do we do? What's the alternative? I read these guys. I read them all. I actually read them again, which is something I swore I'd never do once I got out of college. I'm actually reading the Divine Comedy, too. And I don't know why. It's just, I said, I read that in college once, and everybody says that's a great book. And most of the people I talk to about it say, well, it's all about hell. And I said, that's only one chapter. There is a heaven and a purgatory in that, too. But I said, I'd almost forgotten that. And it's really dull. But I do it for the hell of it. And I have to do this. Every morning, I do this. And I don't have an answer. Because the system that they set up in the 1880s was it for a different people. 4 million people, African Americans were not included. All of them, or most of them, from Northern Europe, white, and Christian. I can't think of anybody that was, there may have been a few Jewish members, but they were all Judeo-Christian. And based on that aspect of theology and law come together. That's what the social contract was meant to be. You take the theological arguments of the Bible, or in my sense, I read the Quran too, or the Quran, it says the same thing, be nice to people, share things, do the right things. But what now? What do we do now with the millions of people we have from hundreds of different places, with huge numbers of social and political and economic values? Can you still have Madison's democracy? Or do we need to change something? Do we need to give the presidency more responsibility? We have. The President of the United States today has more power than even Alexander Hamilton would have found plausible. The bureaus that now run the United States government, there were 3 in Washington's presidency. Bonus points, anybody can tell me what they were? Not you, Jim. No lawyers. Well, of course, I'm not even sure lawyers know anymore. Shut up, Dan. Anybody know? What? Well, then, of course you know. You went to Harvard, for God's sake. Of course, I don't know what they teach up there anymore. Aiden, do you know you're still my favorite person? So, say again? Well, that's the same thing, Secretary of State and Foreign Affairs. But that's good, you got 1, although you tried to make it 2. Does anybody else know? Treasury was Sue. And war. I liked it, because when they called it war, it made sense. You know how many there are now? Let's try that one, ladies and gentlemen. How many of those federal cabinet bureaus are there now? Do you know? 5. 23. You know how many people are employed in those embassies? In those embassies. In those. See, I did your work. Because I would normally come to you, Jim, and say, you know this stuff far better than I do, and you'd say, oh, yeah, 22. 4 million people work in those administrations. 4 million. 3,000 worked in Washington's and Jefferson's administration. Do we need them? I mean, that's been the argument. You're the ones sitting out there who are going to vote. You're not going to vote 1890 anymore. Half of you couldn't vote. And I'm not sure any of the faculty own that much property. Well, you do. We also skimmed while we were teaching here. There's nothing you can do to me. I'll just plead old. Didn't they do that with Biden? That guy said he's too old. If he goes before a jury, they won't convict him. I'm old. That kind of thing. Yeah, so you're the people I count on. I'm dead. And I'm going to vote for Condoleezza Rice in the next. And there's no sense in voting for anybody but Democrats in New Jersey. Although they've had some Republicans. So as I've come to the end of this, I'm saying, okay, I get all of that. I really didn't read that much anyhow. John Stuart Mill. I don't anybody reads him at all anymore. Liberty. Here's what he said, and one of you made a comment about this. The freedom of thought and emotion. The freedom to pursue, I need my glasses again. To pursue tastes, even if they are deemed immoral. I love that one. What the hell does that mean? Prostitution in Nevada? We would consider it immoral, but it's legal. Yeah. Freedom to unite, if not forced, and no harm has done to others. Come on, Jerry. You're my great liberal. Yeah. Many questions, very few answers from liberals. And too many answers from conservatives. Which is what? they talked about it, but they were smart enough to realize it was going to happen. I mean, I hear that all the time. And Madison hoped that there would be no factionalism. He writes about it. And since they're going to be factionalists, men are, again, sorry, ladies, but this one will please you. Men are self-interested in the marketplace. They're not going to do what's the right thing to do. They believed that government was the only thing that suppressed people from doing what they would naturally do. From Hobbes on down the line. Leave the beast in the field and he will be the beast. The only thing that controls us are women and law. Yeah? I know in your case that's true. Because I know your wife. Did I answer your question? No. Listen, Jerry, I've cashed my check. As soon as this is over, I'm going to say thank you. And Jim and I and a select group, and my son is here to protect me, by the way, Jeffrey, who's a distinguished author and of course, shut up. Yeah. And what about it? We've got there was a fourth estate in 1790, but it wasn't the way it is. I know, Jerry. Isn't strong enough. Some people would argue that it should keep its mouth shut. See, if you give me a liberal perspective, I will always return with a conservative. If somebody gives me a conservative, I'll give you a liberal. You mean to tell me that MSNBC doesn't have more influence than a congressperson from Idaho? Oh, of course, because only dumb people watch television. I mean, for God's sake, I've used that term for years. Smart people read books, other people watch television. Come on. Shouldn't you, as a journalist, be more interested in what the media is saying? Who the hell reads a newspaper anymore? Yeah, I know, all four of you. What is the circulation of the New York Times, Jerry? And who watches Fox every morning? How many people? I didn't hear you. No, I understand. See, that's that individualism. But you have the right not to watch it. How many people watch it? And how many of the New York Times? 5 million. And 30-some million. MSNBC, probably 20. And that's even before you get to the major NBC, CBS. Who the hell reads papers? I talk to kids my son's age on down the line. They don't even subscribe to papers. They get their news from television. Am I concerned about it? No. And they look on, that's television. It's just a small television. They're getting their news from any variety of people. And it's misinformation and disinformation. And I say, that means people lie. And they say, yeah, those are just big words for lying. And I say, do people lie in public office? Well, Trump does. And I said, does Biden lie? No. If you're on MSNBC. If you're listening to CBS, Trump has never told a lie in his life. And all Biden does is lie. Well, they both lie. Because politicians lie, and there's no law against it except for 3 or 4 legal issues. I don't mind people lying. It's now our job to find out that they're lying and say, you're full of it. The right to think, the right to speak, kind of thing. And you know, like the guys that I drink coffee with, I can't solve it. I'm thinking about it. Does the size of the country now in population, does its broad egalitarian access to voting make a difference? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? I don't know. Does the centralization of power in the federal government make it better or make it worse? When's the last time the United States declared war the way the Constitution says it must be fought? World War II. We haven't declared a war since World War II. Boy, I sure was there. Right? Who did that? Would Madison have approved that? Or is it smarter to allow the president with some support from Congress to do it, so you don't get caught while the ballistic missiles are flying? Those are the questions that concern me when I came to talk today. I could write stuff, I can tell you what John Bill said. I can tell you what Rousseau said. They were writing in the 19th century, when we were small. I could look around this room, I wouldn't see any women in here. And those African-American students back there will be outside serving mint juleps. Is it better? Well, of course it's better, until they're wrong. See, that's what everybody, well, we should let that shouldn't happen. Well, what do you want me to do? This is what you're stuck with. Is there anything better? I don't know. The Greek philosophers thought that, read Pluto. Kings. Philosopher kings. Jim. He's my king. Is there a perfect person? Everyone says, well, Franklin Roosevelt. Get the hell out of here. No. He's a great president, but he had flaws. The democracy does that. It's dirty. It screws around. It makes mistakes. When we say there ought to be freedom for this, do we really mean it? If you look at the preamble to the Constitution, it tells you exactly what we're trying to do. But the last phrase is, and to promote the blessings of liberty. Everything else came before that, to promote the blessings of liberty. And if I were to ask everyone in this audience, given those 5 preambles, which to you is the most important? He gets justice, defense, the general welfare, they got them all in there. But the last one is liberty for us and our posterity. And you ask yourself today, do I feel comfortable expressing a held thought about a tough issue and hold my voice because I'm in the wrong company? I don't want to be considered Fox. I don't want to be considered MSNBC. So I won't say anything. You violated the 2 principles that Pericles defined 4,000 years ago. If I got the math right. 2,000 years. Ask yourself that. And then tell me whether you're the problem with democracy, or there is no problem with democracy. It's dirty, smudgy, and screwed up. But I can't think of anything better. Anybody? Plato, maybe, question about him. And he was talking about a time when people met together and there were 40 of them. I'm talking to people in here, there are more people that are here than voted at a meeting in Athens. And you didn't even want to be here. And I'm not going to solve anything for you. Except screw around a little bit. So I've cut through all of it. And again, I finally go back and read the Greeks. At a time where people were run by emperors and they did what they were told within reason, and if they had a thought, they got away with rid of it very soon. And they just did what they were told. And that little city-state, and that goofy appendage into the ocean, had its 500 men. Sorry. Some women should have been there. Guess what? Every one of those voters had to take arms and serve in the Athenian military. That was part of the job before they could vote. But how many of us sitting in this room feel comfortable enough that we could revise the American democratic theory just among ourselves. I know how many times I've sat with guys and chicks, my deli in Cherry Hill, and said, we could run the government. And I get up and get another cup of coffee. Then I have to go to the bathroom when I get home, so I'm going to stop doing that. But do you feel comfortable enough to vote for the people you want to do it? Do you feel comfortable that you could do it yourself? If I constructed a Massachusetts town hall, democracy. I know you do, Jerry. Because of your journalism, I pick on Jerry because I admire him. How many of you feel that you could? Talk to the kids first. I don't care how old you are. I'm 82. You're kids. Think you could run the government?
For the whole country or locally?
No, for the whole country. This is going to be the new Congress. Remember, the Swiss do not have a chief executive.
Not representative.
It said?
Not representative.
You could not. Could you run do you think you could run the country well if I made you king? Don't we all? I have a phrase when I talk to, in the kingdom of Girard, here's what I do. And then they all say, not in my kingdom. That kind of thing. Sure, I could solve every problem in the United States tomorrow. I think Donald Trump said that. I want to pick somebody and then I'll take questions. Because I'm leaving you think, speak, own. How we do that is what we have and what we've had since Joe Scarborough's Madisonian democracy. I guess he just wants to add some panache to the time. Oh well, whatever. If you were the queen for a day, what's the first law you would compel? No, I know what you do. You beat up. You tell Jim to stop it. What would you do? Queen for the day. All of you be thinking, because I'm going to hit on you. I'd make sure I never had to fly on another commercial airplane. I'd have my own plane. My wants are limited. What? Say again? Okay, so instead of allowing the states to decide those issues, you would create a federal law that women would have the right to do that. In all conditions, under any circumstance. You're the queen. You do whatever you want. Fair enough. Fair enough. Men should not even be allowed to involve themselves in these issues, should they? I'm starting to mess with your woman.
I don't involve myself with their life. Nobody asked me if I was.
Yeah, but you didn't hide anything in there. Well, you didn't make that by yourself, did you? Well, I understand that, but I just wonder whether you even consider that. I can embarrass people, too. And at my age, nobody can embarrass me unless I wet myself or something. I can see how nuance would fit into that, right? But I respect that. That would certainly solve a lot of problems for Joe Biden. And it might be the right thing to do. Yes? You agree with her?
I heard her.
That's the number one thing you would do.
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, that wouldn't be my number one thing.
What would be yours, Queen?
I don't know. I mean, I would try to cut down the inflation and give teachers a better paying job when we're getting disrespected.
Are you a teacher?
Yes, I am. Beverly Hills Middle School, 6th grade, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. 92 countries represented.
So it's not just self-informed. The fact is that people would have to pay that to you. And with the inflation going on the way it is,
It's terrible. I'm a single mom. I don't get any child support. My ex-husband said bye-bye, so there you go. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things I would like to change.
and what would you pay yourself?
What would I give myself? Would I be valued? I'm a teacher. I'm a nurse. I'm a counselor. You name it. I wear many hats. And I teach.
Are you any good?
I teach, the lawyers. I teach the doctors. I teach everyone that's in here, basically.
Well, then why'd you do the job?
Because I love it. But then
Well, then shut up.
I don't have to think about getting out of that, Jolly. I have to think about getting out of this because of the disrespect.
Listen,
Hey, you asked the question.
yeah, I did, and I just gave her
Let
an
the
answer.
record show you asked.
Listen, I made $9,500 a year when I came here. I didn't when I left.
Yeah. I started out making $19,700 in 1995.
You should make more. We didn't have a union. That's fine. You're the queen. You can do that.
I'm definitely a
Guess
teacher,
what?
so really,
You can still teach. Now you're the queen.
all teachers.
All right, let's get a man in here.
Hey! We don't need no men.
We're talking about the Constitution here. There were no women there.
How about a little more macro than micro?
Okay, go ahead.
What issue? How about you institute term limits on the legislative branch and the judicial branch along with the executive? How about that?
The king
And
for a
then
day?
wait 50 years.
Okay.
See if it works.
And where would you shut them off? What age?
Well, I think on the legislative branch, I think you can give them 12 years, which is 2 terms for a senator and 6 terms for House of Representatives, and then you're out. You're out. Everyone was supposed to volunteer
Congressional
and share
representative,
the lifting.
they'd be in their 40s.
Good, let them go and get a job. Let them go and get a
I'm
job.
sure they've already
And
fed with
live
their
in a
nest.
system that they created by the legislature.
Okay.
And for the Supreme Court,
What do you think,
I
Jerry?
think you could make it, the 25 years or age 80. Longer out. And then you're out.
Because I'm
You're
82.
retired.
Because I'm 82?
No. Yeah. You went
Okay.
down 2 years ago.
Fair enough. Jerry, do you agree? We just wanted to get another man in. Other guys?
Universal health care.
Okay.
Good for everybody.
So universal health care, some people would say we already have it, within reason. Did you want to say something, sir? Congratulations. Are you underpaid? About the same time I did. And I was in 1972. 73, Jim, or 2? Yeah. What are you making now? $150,000. Oh, under 2. Under 200,000? Wow. Okay. So all of you think you know what you do for the reasons that you want to do it. And then somebody in this massive audience that you're in charge, you never sought anybody's opinion. Yes, you could. Hell, I talk over you. You could have talked over me. You could have stood up and said, what do you think? But you didn't. You know why? Because you had the sole power.
Amen.
Amen. Which is why we don't. Right? Damn.
We'll have time for one more question. Sweet answer.
Go ahead. Dan, what are you doing here, John? You're sitting with sticks. These were 2 of my best basketball players. These 2 guys. Stand up. That was the last team that I What happened, John?
Second question, can you comment on the primary system where it seems like our choices are kind of to the left, far left and far right, now you do a general election and you're kind of stuck with what comes out of the primary?
Well, I guess it emerges out of the progressive era, where they were tired of the Senate. Popular votes didn't vote the Senate. State assemblies did. So there were no popular votes for the United States Senate until the 20th century. So those primaries were part of that evolution. So that, am I wrong? What kind of? You were giving that.
That would be good. All I would answer your question is that primaries are chronically under-attended. So a typical primary will have about 20% turnout. Philadelphia primary had 17%. Who's turning out? The true believers on the left, the true believers on the right. Who gets selected? True believers on the right, true believers on the left. And then when the normal curve, when us who are in that moderate that will come out to vote, our choice is far left and far right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
How do we fix it? That's the question.
How do we fix it? Maybe you have compulsory voting, but maybe we could go back to the caucus system. And I don't mean the Iowa caucuses. I mean, we let the party regulars say, hey, you're too far right for us, you're too far left, this is what we need. Or we have voter turnout.
Or we give people a day off from work. We don't require our DDs to vote. We need to, there's so many different ways you can improve.
But Richard Hofstadter, back in the 50s, wrote a couple of really good books about this. And here's the difference. In our era, the Republican and the Democratic Party were not that far apart. They shared common values. So the left would never let the left go too far. There would be no Jacobin revolt. And the right would never let the John Birch types exist too long. They would moderate the system. I would look at it and say, yeah, probably a hell of a lot better than they do today. But that's how he resolved it, because Charles Beard and others were telling you the Constitution was designed to protect the wealthy. I mean, they were progressive historians. And then he came along and said, wait a minute. Our two parties got along fairly well. They fought with each other, but they fought about common things they accepted. You know, you look at stuff, Brown versus Board. How many black justices were on that court? How many women? 9-1 vote, unanimous. How many white justices were on that court? How many black justices were on that court? All the justices were white and they were all male. On the Brown versus Board, they're not all white now. When they passed Brown versus Board, there were 9 white justices and they voted 9-0. Roe v. Wade. How many women were on that court? None. None. Huh. How many women were on the Dobbs court?
4.
Well, just think about what you just said. The people who passed the most protective laws on abortion were all men. The vote on Dobbs was on 4 women. 3. Well, the one guy looks a little bit long. And I'm very careful about gender stuff nowadays. Any questions? You done? Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for Joly.
No, come on.
And now we invite everyone to join us in the dining room for light refreshments and reception and time to spend with old friends. Thanks for being here, everyone.
You're a student of mine, come inside in.